Hi, I'm Wanda from Orlando Craft, and this is our Quilting Blocks channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Mosaic Pinwheel Block. Now it's super easy, you'll be able to run these up in no time at all. Now you can actually use it like this, where you sew them all together and you end up with this diamond effect here as well. Or you can put sashing between. The choice is entirely yours. So let's get on and show you how to make it. Okay, so here's what you're going to need to make the Mosaic Pinwheel Block. We need 4-inch squares and we need 8 in a background colour, and I've got mine in white. We'll need 4 in a contrasting colour and 4 4-inch squares in another contrasting colour. So I have my little pile of 8 squares here, and they're all facing up at the moment. I've sorted them so that they're all in that order. And now I'm just going to flip that whole pile over, and I'll take each one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner. Now I'm using a friction pen so that it comes off the fabric, it won't stain the fabric. Don't use a ballpoint. You can use the chalk marker if you wish. And I'm just going to draw a line there from point to point. I'm going to do that on each of these squares. So I've drawn a line on all of my squares here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the coloured squares and I'm going to lay it down here right side facing upwards. I'll take one of the squares with the line drawn on it and have it right side facing downwards. So right sides together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a line 1/4 of an inch on either side of that drawn line. And I'm going to do that with each of these squares. So I've taken my squares and I've sewn 1/4 inch seam on either side of that drawn line. And now we're going to take each of these and we're going to cut along that drawn line. So I get my ruler and just place it along the line. And I'm going to cut from point to point. So, and that's going to give me 2 half square triangles. And that's going to happen with each of those squares. So there we go. So I've ironed all of those half square triangles and I've pressed the seam to the dark side, and I've done that with all of those squares. So now it's time to trim them up. I'm going to trim them down to 3.5 inches. So I'll take my ruler, place the 45-degree line along the seam line and bring it up to the 3.5, leaving a little bit of space. Now if you aren't familiar with squaring half square triangles, then we have a very good video and I'll put a link in the description below. So just lining that up. Okay. Go up one side and across the top. Put the square, put the 3.5 inch line down here and match it along the side as well. And we have our 45-degree angle on the seam line. And again, just cut up side and along the top. And there we are, we have a perfect 3.5 inch triangle, square, and I'm going to do that with all the rest of them as well. So now that the blocks have all been trimmed, it's time to lay them out in the pattern. And the pattern will be available on our website, so you'll be able to go there and just check how it should look. So now it's time to sew this up. So what we're going to do is we'll sew each of the rows together first. And we do that by taking the one block and placing it over another and joining them with a 1/4 inch seam. Do the same with the last 2 blocks in the row. So with a 1/4 inch seam, and when that's done, we'll join those 2 lots together. And we'll do that all the way down. So I've sewn my little squares into rows, as you can see here. Now I'll show you how I've pressed them. Now on the top row, I've pressed them all this way, and on the next row, I've pressed them in the opposite direction, and the same here, so that they're all opposing. Now that's just going to make it easier for when we nest our rows together. And I'm going to do that now. So I take the top row, lay it over the next row, and you can see what I was saying here, how the rows will now nest in beautifully, and that'll give a nice crisp line when we sew them together. So I'll sew the 2 top rows together, then the bottom rows, and then I'll sew the whole lot together in the middle. Okay, so I have sewn the block together, it's all finished, and you can see here I've pressed the middle seam open. That's just to reduce the bulk in the middle here, and these side seams I've pressed to one side so that it'll help with nesting when we sew another block on. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget that the written instructions will be available over on orlandocraft.com.